All right, this is like the part of the interview, like going forward, it goes into some crazy stuff. All right, and I got comments. Okay, that's why we're doing a part two here. All right,
Parenthetically, but like, well, I've never heard that before. So you
about
believe going
space.
back 30 years that people in the U.S. government and in the finance world wanted money for
Yeah, it wasn't
space?
U.S. government. It was the central banking. If you look at the group of people who meet through the BIS,
What's that?
the BIS is the Bank of International Settlements, and it's the central bank of central banks.
Where is that located?
It's in Basel, Switzerland,
Yeah.
and it has 63 of the most powerful.
Why is that important? Well, Ripple, was working with all them to figure out what the fucking spreadsheet problems while they're underneath that SEC investigation and targeting by the government. So basically, they figured out how to solve the fucking problems from the very people that are causing the fucking problems. You know, and that's the point why they're trying to prevent Ripple from even taking part. Like they thought they could learn from Ripple in order to launch their own fucking thing, but Ripple, I feel like, and from what all the documentation shows and what the tech is, has literally usurped them, and now like they are the actual threat and the contender to taking over the financial system, getting rid of the SWIFT. Because guess what? We have the XRP ledger, which is a method of payment. We have the a unit of account, RLUSD, which is just one gumball in that fucking gumball machine. We have the means of exchange as XRP that can settle in 3 to 5 seconds for whatever your chosen gumball is, whether that's a stable coin, a central bank digital currency for whatever other country that wants to run that shit, and tokenize assets. And by the way, tokenization gets rid of the fucking fraud, which is what's causing all of these problems.
Central banks as its members, and the New York Fed and the Fed are both shareholders. They became shareholders in 1994.
In one sentence, what's the purpose of the Bank of International Settlements?
Okay, so there are two things you need to know about the Bank of International Settlements.
I'm not sure my brain's big enough for this, but keep going.
It is.
I'll help
It
you.
has sovereign immunity.
What does that mean?
It's above the law.
It's its own country.
Right. It's its own country. It has its own police force. And essentially, one of its staff being in a car accident or, minor things, no one has the legal authority to move against it. Okay, it has sovereign immunity. That's number one. Number two, it can move money and hold it on its on its balance sheet and manage money secretly. So if I want to, I'm grossly oversimplifying. If I want to steal 21 trillion from the U.S. government and park it on the balance sheet of BIS, it can move it anywhere in the world and it can keep it on its balance sheet secretly.
Noistro voistro.
Why would there be an organization? But first of all, where does its power? Like, who empowered it to have sovereign immunity in the right?
It was created after World War I and sort of collected its powers and got going in the 30s. And it was created in theory to manage the reparations of the German government. But if you read the real history, it was because the Bank of England and the central bankers wanted an entity that had sovereign immunity. They wanted to be able to move money secretly. So, for example, if you look at what happened during World War II and all the money that was moving back,
Those unregulated blockchains are really helping out too, to go to the darker elements of this entire fucking plot.
back and forth between the Germans and Americans. Dulles was over in Switzerland helping to manage all these transfers back and forth.
And what do we remember about Alan Dulles and the Dulles brothers? That their sister was so fucking pissed that basically her husband, committed suicide because he was, Jewish, that she took all the stuff that the Dulles brothers were doing and gave it to fucking Israel, and then now Israel had to blackmail the Dulles brothers, and then how else are they getting that fucking nuclear material that JFK didn't want them to have, and and we have what's his name from the fucking CIA, fucking James Angleton, as the back door to help that facilitate that, and of course you got the Vietnam thing going on, the deep state in our government, overthrew that nation's sovereign government, did a coup against them, even though we are supporting that government, in order to keep the Vietnam thing going, for the minerals, for the trade rights, for the opium, for all this other shit, to keep the fucking scam going of the Federal Reserve System, the Bank of International Settlements, everything. We need new tech. That's the point here.
There's a wonderful book called The Tower of Basel by a wonderful Hungarian journalist where he documents and describes the whole history of the Bank of International Settlements. And if you want to understand power in this world, understanding how the Bank of International Settlements and the plumbing of the central banking system works is very, very important.
Yes, it is.
I've always been worried that if I knew more, that I would become mentally ill.
No. So I just have to say that
that's not what happens.
Reality is sort of...
I can attest. Here's what happens. You just don't give a fuck anymore, all right? You will say and do damn near anything in order to make it stop. What did Mario Savos do? You got to put your body upon the gears, upon the wheels, and you have to make it stop. How many lives have been destroyed? Not only through the senseless wars and all that other stuff happening foreignly, that's not here, but all of our people are fucked. Whether it's the poisons that, how many deaths have you people, go through because of the pharma and all the poison that we didn't know we were getting fucking poisoned, or just the financial hardships that cause divorces, breaks up fucking girlfriend, boyfriend. Meanwhile, the whole population thing's going straight downhill, and it's just cracking all of the bedrocks of every single institution with the corruption. Man, this shit pisses me off.
Of the door that you open to find real solutions. So there are real solutions, and the biggest...
Yes, there are, and it's called XRP, Ripple, XRPL, RLUSD. We have to get out of this fucking system, man. We have to support Trump and whatever they're fucking doing. And you know what? They're using that goddamn leverage that the Epstein people fucking... It's awful that it happened. Okay, we need to protect the fucking victims. We gotta build cases. And then we gotta see if we can use these motherfuckers and then burn them. Because we have to thread this needle, man. And there's so many things at stake right now. And all the now fags out there that want to keep, where's the Epstein files at? Motherfucker, what do you think he's doing? He's using it, okay? You have to make a decision as the executive what you're going to do, all right? Like, there's too much at stake. And at least for all the evil that happened to those people in the Epstein files or the Diddy files or whatever else, for all the victims and all the evil that happened to them, at least it couldn't go in fucking vain. We can use it against them, and I know that this is logic. They're fucking using it. I don't give a shit what anybody says. They're fucking using it in order to get these things done. What Trump say? We want one big beautiful bill that's gonna have everything in it. I think they're gonna be using it, man, and we're gonna look at it. We got the Genius Stablecoin Act. We're getting fucking pushed through Congress right now. We have all of these other things. Meanwhile, they're starting to roll out the arrests. They started off with the fucking judges, but we'll see how that keeps going as we move on to the future here. But what is best to say? We're moving towards a new Bretton Woods, and he's fucking right. He is fucking right that we are. So it's all about what tech are we gonna fucking use, fella? Because this shit with the no audits and the no anything, it is eroding and destroying our people.
The obstacle to implementing them is nobody wants to face it. So I used to have a pastor who would
Nobody
say,
wants to face the truth of how things
nobody
actually
wants
work.
to face the truth. And I understand that, because the hardest thing I ever had to do, Tucker...
Or worse, they know the truth and understand the tech, and they put it behind a class wall, and, they merge fag, and they try and just stay on screen. Like, it's either they're fucking... It's either they're idiots or they're frauds. It's like we don't really have much of a fucking choice here, Like, if they're this dumb that they can't put it together, that Ripple built this new financial system, we can use it, what use do we have for them?
Was look in the mirror and say, I'm the patsy. I was the Assistant Secretary of Housing. I didn't know, and I went along, and I didn't face this. I should have seen this faster. I should have said, I'm the patsy. And it's sometimes it's harder than facing death.
I saw it when I was 19. Ron Paul saw it for 30 years, for 40 years, something like that. And then Ludwig von Mises and Hayek and everybody else has been seeing it, but they don't get any fucking airplay.
To admit that you've been part of, a big lie and you've been tricked.
As someone who advocated for the Iraq War on television, I've lived this.
Oh, no.
Yes, I did.
Well, the part of facing this is you have to forgive yourself. You really have to. But I used to have a pastor who would say, if we can face it, God can fix it. because you have to understand we can't fix it. There are many, many things we can do to change the course.
Yeah.
And I believe ultimately freedom can prevail. And
I
there's
believe
many
that
things we
too.
can do to help that happen. But ultimately, this is a spiritual war, and you have to call on God. You have to call on the divine. And that's where the battle is ultimately going to be decided. And that means, literally, I believe this is true, the divine intelligence cannot go to work unless we're willing to face it. You know, we have to look at it, we have to pray, we have to ask for help, and we have to deal with it. And the solutions, the real solutions, will be cultural. There'll be millions of people acting in their own life, refusing to be controlled, you know, individually. So,
Very, very wise what you just said. I think it's true, and thank you for saying that. I want to just go one more time to the space question. So you said that people with power at the central banks decided that we need to sort of colonize space or
Right.
move towards space. Did that happen?
so here's what happened. And we have two wrap ups, and I think I sent them to you. One is we published in 2015 called Space Here We Go. And it's got a picture of a businessman, you know, taking off in a spaceship. And then we, in 2017, after a couple of the big investment banks wrote big things about space investment, we wrote one called The Space-Based Economy. And we track space on Solera Report. So I would refer you to that. But I think, you know, first of all, you've seen a lot of capital centralized into a few billionaires who then reinvest that money in space. So Musk, Bezos, you know, so clearly there's a centralization of capital and a reinvestment.
So the idea of space is what, I mean, just the biggest possible picture. Why would you be interested in space? I say this as someone who's not.
Right. So let me give you a couple reasons why. First of all, you're looking for.
All right, number one, Musk. Okay, he's donating his time as Doge, and he's trying to update his systems and doing all that stuff. And he's getting, and his businesses are getting targeted. And you know, he launched Starlink, which means you know if everything really goes down, at least we got Starlink later, and we can still fucking transact over the XRP ledger. Probably, you know, there's a lot of fucking conspiracies going around that they're gonna you know partner up with the XRP. But the point is, it's like it's internet that can be accessed if everything goes to shit. What the and he's clearly on our side. He bought X. We're able to fucking talk again, you know, and we got to line up here. We got to get on somebody's fucking side here. And you know, when I look at Musk, yeah, he had some shit in the past. You know, he was a Democrat, whatever. But you know, look what they did to his son. You know, I see when I look at Musk, I see a wounded, pissed off father, and that's why he's doing what he's doing. All right, and I think that's exactly his modus operandi, and now it's even more so after he's helping Trump get into office, and now he's helping fucking fix the goddamn country, and I mean that like this is like the things that they have done to us are goddamnable actions. Okay, it's not a curse if it's an accurate description.
The miners are looking for a variety of different resources. So there are practical reasons, if you can get the cost down, that you would want to do asteroid mining. The big one, the big economic one, is control is most easily implemented by satellites. So you want to put up a whole ring of satellites that, combined with telecommunications, can basically help run the control grid. And not just the control grid in the West, the control grid.
Are we forgetting about the NSA? Like, and the Five Eyes intelligence services, and that all satellites are run by the DoD. Like, we're underneath this right now.
If you're going to shift huge amounts of money globally, how are you going to track and enforce that your money is being properly invested? Well, you need a control grid globally. So I think that's part of it. The last thing, and I don't know the answer to this, is I think there is real concern about geophysical risks.
Yeah.
And one way to deal with that is to make sure we don't bet the ranch on one planet.
So to that, if we could just linger on that, thank you for that. That all makes sense. If we just linger on one question. So geophysical risks. So we've been lectured for, I don't know, 30 years now about climate change. Climate change is obviously an ongoing feature of life on this planet.
Scam.
The glaciers.
It's not.
Scam.
So, well, of course, it's not. And I think people have figured that out.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that smart, highly informed people aren't worried about
Right.
geophysical risks. They are, and I know some of them. So what do you think those risks are that honest, smart people who are interested in self-preservation and thriving, like what are the risks they're worried about?
So I think the first is a solar minimum, where you get big drops in the economy and the agriculture, and you can't feed the population.
Right.
This is where everyone should stop and go watch Randall Carlson and his thoughts on climate change and the Younger Dryas impact theory, and basically the Ice Age was all of our ancestors basically told the truth that there was a big fucking flood because the asteroid hit the ice sheet and vaporized it, and there's called these mega floods, and we had to rebuild civilization again, and there's been 14 or 15 category like 3 of magnitude. If they were to happen today, we get sent into the Stone Age for 150,000 years, which is when the anatomically correct humans emerged. So there's been 16 events of those. So it's not beyond the realm of consideration that we've had to restart civilization several times on this planet.
There are changes in climate because of the distance of the Earth from the sun.
Right.
And that changes.
Right. So we know throughout history we go through periods of solar minimum.
Solar minimum is the name?
I think it's called solar minimum. I'm not an expert in
cycles.
this. So
they are worried about climate
Mikulvich cycles, go look it up.
change, but they don't think it's coming from your suburban.
right, it's not coming from human behavior. Now there are environmental problems coming from human behavior.
For sure.
And
That's for sure.
right. So that's one.
And do you think that risk is real?
I don't know.
For the record, I have one friend who's very well informed who has convinced me that is real. That they're very concerned about water.
If you look at the history, of solar,
they're very concerned about water, and the guy that Mr. Pink Eye that got the head of the World Economic Forum now that Klaus stepped down, he's under investigation. We'll see if anything comes of that. But this guy literally said that water is not a human right. It's basically a commodity. He was like the head of Pepsi or some shit. Clearly James Bond level villain type shit. Okay, what was a Scepter like? Yeah, like you know what I mean? Spectre, like fuck.
or minimums, and you look at what it does to. There was a Russian. I can't remember if he's an economist or science that did a lot of research on the stock market and solar activity. And if you're the central bankers and you're in charge of managing the financial system, that reality would make me very nervous. So,
okay.
So I think I think there's something there worth understanding. The other thing is it appears to me, if you go back through history, every 10,000, 12,000 years we have, some kind of huge disaster,
An extinction event.
a near extinction event.
Randall Carlson.
So I don't know if you've ever read the science fiction book Three Body Problem.
No.
It's fascinating. It's one of the top Chinese science fiction.
Great series on Netflix.
And it's about
I've read no Chinese science fiction. I'm feeling very ignorant this morning.
No. Here's the thing. I'm just trying to figure out what in the world's going on.
Yeah, amen. I'm in the same place.
And so that always, as you know, that always leads you to the most.
I can give you a clue.
Right.
It does.
Right. So in one, I think the thing that got me to read Three Body Problem was Obama made some cryptic comment about people ought to read this book. It was like, hint, hint, here are the problems I'm dealing with. And the Three Body Problem is about other bodies that come into the solar system, and it's impossible to predict.
Are we going to talk about Nibiru now?
Their trajectory, and then when they do, they create this catastrophic flooding and earthquakes and all this other stuff. Anyway, but I think that whether it's a pole shift, magnetic pole shift is one of the
Great.
Theories of what causes these events. but there is a history of near extinction events. And one of the things that I've looked at, because I'm trying to figure out, between fiscal 1998 and fiscal 2015, there were 21 trillion of undocumentable adjustments in the U.S. government. If you go to our website, missingmoney.solera.com, we have years and years of documentation, including the government financials that show this. And so the question is, where's all this money going? And one of the things I've looked at,
it doesn't matter what Doge does, as long as we're underneath the floodplain of the Fed to keep the money printer going. All this, it'll flood right back in. Like, whatever dams and levees we put up, it doesn't matter as long as this fucking thing's still around.
in the process of looking at where all this money is going, is the underground base and city infrastructure and transportation system that's been built.
Alex Jones has entered the chat. We got the interdimensional elves, One of my favorite things Alex Jones has ever said. He's like, in my ranch we got a lot of guns. I'm like Smaug of guns. It's just a shirtless Alex Jones, just belly flopped on a fucking pile of weaponry. Oh, what the fuck?
I'm sorry?
Yes. So we have built an extraordinary number of underground bases and supposedly transportation systems. Some of these are a record of, some of these are documented as part of the national security infrastructure. I think there are many more. So
in the United States?
The United States, and all over the world. But from 2021 to 2023, I took one of the smartest subscribers in the Solera Report network.
I mean, it wouldn't be the first time, Darren Cayu in Turkey, that's basically the whole underground, city that they built, a long time ago. How the hell they lit the whole thing, and that'll get you, that's a brain buster there. And you got the shit underneath the pyramids that, we're still waiting on real confirmation of that, but, fucking crazy if it's actually really true, We're just learning more and more how everything is just a scam. Can we just please have one honest thing, and that be our money? Come on.
And he and I spent 2 years collecting all the data and all the allegations on underground bases. And then we systematically went through and tried to estimate our guess, this is totally a guess, of how many underground bases, both underground in the United States, but also underground under the ocean around the United States. And our estimate was 170 with the transportation network connecting them.
Oh, that's
and
nice.
What would be the purpose?
The purpose, if you thought you were going to get a near extinction event, so there, to me, there are two purposes. You have so many activities going on that you need to keep secret, that you're basically building the capacity to, for example, if you're doing a secret space program, you need to platform it from, things that can't be seen. But I think if you're worried about a near extinction event,
that's why they're just raping kids and everything else, because they know the rock's coming, and they're either going to be off planet or underneath it, and we're all just going to get burnt on the fucking cinder. So it doesn't matter if there's nuclear war. Fuck it, it's a quick way to go, people. What the fuck?
That's.
So I know nothing about this other than only window into it. I knew a contractor who worked on one in Washington, in the city of Washington, D.C. Right. And I remember him telling me about a power box, like a transformer box on Constitution Avenue that he told me, because he worked on it personally, was actually the exit, the egress from the White House. That was kind of by vehicle. I thought that was, I was like, really? He goes, oh, yeah, no, I installed it. I know. And I thought, well, that's kind of crazy that in the middle of this big, where I was on Constitution Avenue every day, that you could build something like that without me knowing it. Under the VP's house at the Naval Observatory, same thing. I think most people know that. Next to my brother's house on Macomb Street in D.C. But that's, I always thought that was like preparation for nuclear war. Like, I didn't really think about it that much.
Some of it is, yeah. It's preparation for catastrophe.
So, but you think that there are facilities like that in other places outside DC?
Oh, yeah. So if you're interested, we have a great interview. I did an interview of Richard Dolan on underground bases on the Solari Report, and it's sort of an introduction to the topic, and it's based on a lot of the research of a guy named Richard.
So the one world lizard government, they're underneath the ground. They're they're partnered with the gray aliens, and then the interdimensional elves are the ones that are on our side. And, there's the frequency levels, and then if you're gonna get to a higher lane of consciousness, they're all with this lower plane of consciousness. We really gotta go after it. Here come the battleground for the underground dumbs. I mean, we don't know anything. We can't confirm any of this shit. It's like I don't even know what to do with it. You know what I mean? Like, believe it or not, I don't know what to do with this information. I know what to do about the fucking money system, but it's like, okay, if it exists, what the fuck can we do about this? Where are the solutions? Do we flood it all? Like, what the fuck?
Souter, who is very hard to interview. So Richard kind of went through all the material, and
it's like with Dr. Stephen Greer. Like, he keeps talking about this archive, and he's like, he never gives the sauce. Like, I've watched all his shit, just like with Alex Jones and everybody, like all the conspiracies and stuff. I've watched all that stuff. It's like, give me something I can hold on to and yell about, please. I will.
Clearly, I don't know if you ever saw, Washington Post did a project. It was in 2010 or 12 called Top Secret America. One of the reporters, it was a team of 2 reporters, one of them put together a database of all the different top secret installations that had been built in the country, including since the Patriot Act. And what you saw was just this explosion of money in building so many.
Here's the problem with her claim. How much of that was just fraud? And that's what they wrote on the line item that you're looking at. Doge, we need you.
Both underground and above ground facilities.
Not all sleep aids are made by pharmaceutical companies.
All right, we're going to stop it there.